Um, let's do it. Uh, Dean, I'm so happy you're here. It's always fun when I get to talk to you, whether it's in this kind of format or in person. And I'm just grateful you said yes. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. I love your podcast, and it's like such an honor to get to. And it was so fun. I'm waiting for my episode of the interview I did with you to come out
Oh,
on my
yeah.
podcast. So it's like it's all very connected, web like.
That's right. It's web like, which you talk about a lot in your book. We'll get to that in a little bit. Um, the first thing I want to do, when I know someone, I like to kind of tell a little bit of a story about my impression of you when I first met you and the experience I had. And I will say, I'm not exactly sure the moment we met. Maybe but I don't think I know the moment that we actually met. But I remember hearing about you for years. I mean, because of the Sylvia Rivera project, but also through our dear friend Morgan Bassicus, who would talk about you all the time. And the first time that I spent time with you, and we still haven't spent a ton of time, but the first time I spent time with you, I think was during a somatic training in Seattle. And I think I must have stayed an extra day. I hope it's okay to tell the story, but you invited me to a beach. Is this okay?
Yeah.
And I I showed up to this beach in Seattle, which was so lovely. I didn't even know there were beaches in Seattle. And I showed up and you said, "Get in this inner tube and let me push you around." And I was like, really? Dean Spade about to push me around an inner tube? I've never actually received a request like that. And so I was like, of course, this sounds like an amazing adventure. So I got in the inner tube and you just swam me around the lake and asked me questions about myself. Like you really brought forward the curiosity. You kept deepening the questions you were asking me. And I always remember that day because it was I've had very few experiences like that where someone will really invite connection and intimacy, really be open to another person and curious the way you were that day. So it was just such a sweet, tender introduction to who you are as a person. And I just wanted to name that because I think it's just like it's such a unique experience with someone, and I feel like it connects to what you're doing now and where your work has taken you. So, do you remember that?
I remember that day. And for me, when I moved to Seattle after having lived in like New York City for a long time and other places where I didn't have as much like nature time, and for me, the height of luxury is to be on
Mm.
an inner tube on a body of water. And in Seattle, though, lake is kind of cold for a lot of visitors.
Yeah.
So I love to put someone on the inner tube, be like, you feel the sun on your skin while I show you how pretty this lake is. Let's go out far enough that you can see the mountain peeking out. For me, that is like, I want everyone to have the like best possible encounter with that beautiful water there, which is too cold for many people. So
Wow.
it's really fun to be like, oh, Prentice doesn't even know that we swim a lot in Seattle. And like, you get to now have the most kind of, I think, inviting introduction
Yeah.
to the lake. You're not going to get your legs in the lake weed that's on the
Yeah.
bottom. You're just going to have the like upper layer.
So first of all, that's amazing because 1,000% I would not have gotten in that lake. It was so cold. But also, there's like there. I think you're revealing a kind of a deep thoughtfulness and care. Even in that, you're like, I want you to have the best introduction to this experience. So I'm just curious for you in your own life, like how did you start to orient around that kind of depth of care and thoughtfulness that I think shows up in that story?
I do. I think there's something about whatever that quality is that I learned from my mom. Um, it just makes me think about this thing where, we were quite poor and there was some level of food insecurity and there was a lot of excitement about food in our house when there was good food. And it was like, I remember in the summer when the corn would be on the stalk, it was this game where the corn tastes the best, the faster it gets in the water. So you run from where you pick it, shucking along the way, throwing the corn silk to get it in the pot. Like the pleasure of like, this is going to be so amazing.
Oh,
Let's have the like, you know what I mean? The most pleasurable version. And also like when the raspberries were ripe, like it's time to go out. Or like she'd wake me up early before school started if it snowed so I could have that moment in the snow because, I live in Virginia. It doesn't always stay on the ground very long or might melt.
Yeah.
It's not like a super snowy place. Like, go have it before, like there's a kind of capacity for finding something very special that I think was also related to her growing up in poverty. I remember her telling me about like they'd get an orange once a year in their stocking at Christmas.
Hmm.
She grew up in Eastern Canada, and I think there was not a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables for them. And just like things like that, where you're like really know how to enjoy something. I feel like
Yeah.
that quality, and then that capacity to want to have other people have that
Yeah.
experience with you is something that she definitely taught me about.
Yeah, because it's like there's the enjoyment and the pleasure, and then there's the sharing that seems like it got coupled for you in those experiences of like, there's something that enhances it when we do it together.
Yeah, like
It's
and for years I've been obsessed with like certain roses in Seattle. Like I wish you and I could go on a walk in Seattle because just like
yeah.
the rose at the corner of Thomas and 11th, and there's the rose at the corner of 14, on the block of 14th and Republican. Like there's certain roses, and like
Mm.
I'd love to have someone from out of town or someone who lives in a different neighborhood and walk and be like, "Have you smelled this one? What does it smell like to
Wow.
you?" I think that kind of it's also such a way of getting by in hard times to stay connected to some of those pleasures.
There's so much there, and I want to probably come back around to that and just your kind of how you are looking, it seems, for those moments of pleasure and connection. I want to start first with, your new book, newish, new still, yeah, Love in a Fucked Up World. I never know how to, when there's an asterisk, I'm like, it's fucked, right?
It's
Like,
fucked, yeah.
it's fucked. Um, I want to start really basic. I love talking about love, but I want to just understand when you're talking about love, what are you talking about? What is it? How does it work? What does it do in the world? What's love to you?
I don't know if I've ever actually defined that for myself. I mean, in the title of the book, I think it stands for something people are seeking that the fuckness of the world makes hard to feel satisfied by or find in the ways that we want. It's also the name of like something that's very crowded with illusions,
Hmm.
in our culture. Like maybe this will solve all your problems. Maybe this has to look a certain way. There's just so much there. Like what actually is love? I do think about it. I mean, I read, The Road Less Traveled, like when I was like
Hmm.
a teenager, and whatever it says in there, I'm not gonna get the words right, which think Bell Hooks then made a lot more famous in her work, of like wanting like the full development and well-being
Yeah.
of other people. Like I think that's a really profound, that made a real mark on me when I was a teenager and read that. Um, and I've also actually just lately been doing a lot of workshops about giving and receiving feedback and how
Hmm.
when somebody gives you feedback, like they don't always do it nicely, but it's important to know that it's a sign of thinking that you're important and you matter. And that's why they're taking this risk of telling you something, even if they're saying it mean. And like, could we see all feedback as love or as like input into our well-being or into a system the person strives to have be different or an experience or a group, even if it doesn't always feel like it's love is like not always comfortable or pleasant, but it might relate to like commitment or um, I hate the word investment because it's got those like financial tones, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
I'm I'm caring for what could happen here, or
Hmm.
what I want to change about what's happening here. Like it's something about intention. I don't know. I don't think I have a very clear definition of love, but it's some set of those things.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things I noticed in your work in this book and also mutual aid is that it feels like you're operating, and even in the stories we kind of started the podcast with, it feels like you're operating from a sense of like there's enough. There's like enough or even abundance. Like I can pour into you because we're not actually operating inside of scarcity. So I wonder if that is true. It feels like it's there underneath the surface of what you're doing. And just like what does it change for us when we live from that place?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have had some interesting conversations with people because the book has a little section about like scarcity mentality and how it's encouraged in the systems we live under. And there is material scarcity that people experience, scarcity of touch, attention, food, clean
Yeah.
air, all the
Everything.
things.
Mhm.
And we both know that there's like more than enough of everything to go around on earth. And it's
That's right.
only because of these distorted systems. And then internally, it can feel like, I think a lot of people are suffering from like, oh, I couldn't even possibly. There's a deep avoidance happening culturally. I think we've talked about it before. And so it's like
Yeah.
that can feel like I don't have enough to give anybody anything. And
Mhm.
that, I want to acknowledge that as a real, like a reasonable response to the current culture where we're coerced into overgiving at jobs or like feeling just wrung out and squeezed. But I do actually feel like, and I learned this a lot by working with people where we're all working under crisis conditions. It's kind of amazing what you can give. And also you can be
Mm.
tired without being burnt out. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like you can do a lot with each other and like give a lot to each other and not end up completely. It can be connective and worthwhile and part of cycles of care. So I don't know. I'm like, I do think inside me, I feel like I want to respond to a lot of people, or I want to be open and permeable to a lot of different influences, or like there's a kind of abundance. I want to not get into like a shutdown place where I'm like, I couldn't even about kind of everything. Like that's a place I notice when
Mm.
I'm under certain kinds of stress, I might feel that way about literally everything, about loved ones, about I couldn't even take care of myself in this or that way. I couldn't even do that thing I usually like. Like that's a mode that I think
Mhm.
is understandable, but it's always like, can I reach? I was actually just talking yesterday to maybe our mutual friend B Step, who's also in the generative
Mhm.
somatics world, about this, about the difference between I'm locked down and I'm free. Like
Mhm.
locked down for me has all that avoidance in it, and there's not
Yeah.
enough, and I couldn't possibly tend to that. And like, can I just look for, are there any more choices? Is there any more freedom somewhere in this, even under these conditions? Um, that's not, but not in a way that's like bypassing the reality of how hard this
Right.
is, which I think a lot of like new
That's
agey
right.
stuff will just be like, love yourself, feel great all the time. It's like, that's not, it's just like, you can't skip what it takes and what we're grieving and what we're going through.
Yeah, and I often find that's there's like a multidimensionality of all these things of like when I get shut down in that way, that sometimes I also shut down when people are making an offer or people are trying to pour into me or support me. I miss that all the time because I'll be like, I can't even, like you said, I can't even take on another thing. I can't even. It doesn't only block out the burdens, it blocks out the support for me sometimes. And so the flow of relationship doesn't get to happen when I am in that place. Um, and I just think that's a part of it that we don't talk about is that sometimes um, there is even a sliver of support or some kind of offering there, but we've kind of turned away from the possibility of it too. So it's not like everything you need will magically appear if you just chant this affirmation. But then sometimes how do we ready our bodies to be open to the possibility too?
Yeah, and it might not look exactly like I wanted it to look. I think that happens a lot
Yeah.
for people with romantic love or friendship. I want somebody who will do this and this and this. And it's like, well, what about who's around now? Is there
Right.
something that you could receive from them? And I also think there's a thing really strong in romantic relationships and different kinds of family formations where I just get into a mode of not being open to you. The Gottman thing of like, am I taking your bids? Am
Mhm.
I all these, these little signs, like when you say, hey, did you see that bird? Do I look and say it or do I ignore you? Like, am I no longer kind of picking up even small threads of connection that you're offering me? Or am I not making small threads because I felt rejected a couple of times when you didn't pick mine up? And people kind of get into like a contest of withholding. And a lot of this is unconscious.
Right.
But I think people often, one thing I notice is that people will have a narrative about what's wrong with their date or their best friend or their roommate or whatever. And there's some truth to it. Like, sure, like I don't do the dishes or I'm not a good listener, all the things that we really do to each other. But I'm using that narrative to then keep justifying not picking up what is available between us
Right.
or giving you feedback. Like I've already decided you're not going to listen to me. So I don't even bother trying to say like, hey, I'd love this kind of support when I come back from my shift at the hospital or whatever,
Right.
like, or when I talk about my sick relative, would you attend to me this way? I don't even try to get stuff that you're offering or ask anything from you. And like we both get kind of like more and more turned away. And so I see that in households. I see that in love relationships. I see that in groups that people are doing activism together or whatever, like where it's like, I've built a story and a feeling of avoidance of you. And like, it's like, how do we help each other melt some of that? Feels like kind of
Mhm.
urgent because once we get in that mode, I mean, we've all seen it. Like it can just be like, we're just heading towards greater and greater resentment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, so much about your book when I was reading it, I was like, it feels like you're looking for all the places where we're kind of stuck and unsticking us, or all the places where we've kind of reduced each other in existence to pretty extreme binaries, like good and bad, safe and not safe. And it feels like you're kind of like inviting us to step away from those walls a little bit. And um, I'm just thinking about this moment where there's things that are happening that, I mean, there's increasing state violence, authoritarianism. I mean, we're seeing this locally, globally. And I'm always in this question of like, how do I invite people away from those corners that make them feel safe in a time where there is more violence, there is more threat of violence on kind of all fronts? Like, how are you holding both of those things at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, there's so much more violence that we need each other more than ever. Like, we really need to be able to connect with like whoever's around. We need to be able to build trust with somebody, even though they're not our number one easy category of person, because we're working at this job together, or we're living on this block, or we're in this jail cell together, or whatever. You know, like we really have to. Um, it's actually the time to expand our capacity to connect, to trust, to tolerate imperfections in others or differences, to not project. Like one thing I'm seeing increasingly is like when we get scared, my projection that you represent a whole type of person
Yeah.
in a group. So like you represent all, people who don't have the disability I have, or all the non-trans people, or all the people who are not from whatever group I'm in. Like, and I'm not able to hold that you have those qualities and dynamics as well as other stuff enough to connect. And it feels powerful to just shut you out or call you out for that, oftentimes without knowing you really. Like that's happening a lot in groups I see that are trying to form, and people,
Hmm.
no blame or shame around this, but it's just like, it's really unworkable for where we're
Hmm.
at. Like we really need each other. I was actually talking to someone recently about 12-step groups being one of the places where I've seen people connect really
Yeah.
across difference,
Yeah.
like someone who's
Absolutely.
totally different age group, class, race, life experience, immigration journey. And you're just like, well, we're in this room together and everyone in this room is talking about this really vulnerable stuff. And so now I can see past all of my initial suppositions about someone like you
That's
and be
right.
like, oh, there's some wisdom there. I want to talk to that person about their experience, or we end up supporting each other. And I just have this question. I think as we go to the internet more and more, people have less and less tries at that, at being surprised by others and
Right.
like finding unusual friendship that kind of occurs through often like in-person circumstances, where you don't have everything written out ahead of time to know like what that person's investments or experiences are. And that's the kind of stuff that you need in a crisis, is like the ability to like figure out what you can work together on across difference.
And it seems like the kind of stuff that um, creates crises when we don't have some of that built into us. I'm writing now, and it's really in an unformed state, so I'm not going to talk about it with any kind of clarity. But I'm writing now about loneliness, and loneliness and being in connection and love. To me, we talk about how innate these capacities are, or how we like may deeply long for these capacities, but it does feel like we're in a moment in time where we've almost gotten turned around from what it is that we actually long for. So there's like some imposed mechanism, something we embody, something we're trained into, where we can have a longing and then not reach for it, not move for it. So, sometimes that makes me feel a little bit overwhelmed at the moment. I'm like, what are we going to do when actually what's so fundamental to us feels so far away? Um, and I guess my question to you is like, I hear on the sense of like we're facing crisis, we need each other. What really makes it worthwhile? What makes it worthwhile? Like, how do we start making the case for remembering these capacities or reaching for each other or sticking in there? What makes it worthwhile for you? For
Mm-hmm.
you, Dean Spade?
Well, I want to say that I think that inability to turn towards what we want is a disempowerment that like capitalism and white supremacy really wants, right? Really
Hmm.
wants us to turn to it instead of each other for
Yeah.
everything from food to childcare to connection to safety, right? Like wants us to turn to the cops or imagine the militaries or whatever. And
Yeah.
the good news is that when people are in crisis, we do actually end up being able to connect. Like you just see these stories endlessly, right? And
Yeah.
I also think all the time about that thing. I'm sure you read this about how like people are worried that being online all the time makes people have less empathy. And then
Right.
when they like send kids to summer camp without their phones for 5 days, they all like regain empathy that they were not showing. Like it's like we're animals and we like
Yeah.
evolved to connect and depend upon each other and giggle and cuddle and like we just
Hmm.
we those capacities return unexpectedly, but it is pretty intense how against ourselves and disempowered and lonely and disconnected people are, and how it does produce like so much violence and so much acceptance of harm and all around us. I mean, why is it worth it to me? It's just like, I mean, I just feel like we're living in ecocide. We're living in a set of systems that like want to destroy all life.
Yeah.
And I feel more alive and more like a living animal than I ever have
Hmm.
before. I feel more like I feel this feeling like um, of immediate connection to like plants and animals and other beings around me. The more dire the circumstances of ecocide get, the more I see the genocide in Palestine unfolding and see people's fight for their lives and the outrageous, like kind of unimaginable brutality of
Yeah.
the war machines, the more and just thinking about how much death is happening, the more I feel so moved by like every single baby and dog I
Yeah.
see on the street, and just like old person. I'm just like, wow, we are just like beings who have short lives that are in some ways all equally significant and insignificant. And all that really matters is like that we lived. And like the way that we live is through eating and breathing and being clothed and having shelter. And these are the very things that capitalism thrives on, um, like using to contain us all and to extract. And so this battle to like restore our connection to living, um, and what they will do to what they will risk, which is all life on Earth,
Yeah.
to have this kind of control. It's just the stakes are just so high. And
Yeah.
of course, it's an important time to try to numb everybody out with a bunch of great entertainment technology and to try to make people
Right.
feel disempowered and like they can't trust each other. Like, yeah. And I also just feel you're really aware, like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's really, really, really like worst case scenarios are happening constantly.
Yes.
So, what does it mean to just the kind of your question for the sake of like, what does it mean to tune into life and to resistance, even in the face of the unknown? Like, what is it? What are the skills about being with uncertainty now? I think that's a lot of what I'm connecting to. And a lot of that is being in the moment, in the living body, including when you're in like the world's most boring meeting, or when someone just said something you don't like, or you know what I mean, or when you're having a conflict. Like, just like, what does it
Yeah.
mean to stay with that stuff? That is the why, you know,
That's right.
like the life force that we are all a part of.
Uh,
It sounds so abstract. I think that sounds very abstract and like vaguely religious, but it's just I can't describe what I'm feeling. But
but I think some of those, I will say, I think some of those qualifications keep us from um, really saying what might be our felt experience is that there is something that is ineffable. There's something that is actually beyond the reach of our languaging that does make it worthwhile. It's the experience of being alive, the experience of aliveness, and of awe, of surprise, of what we discover, what we don't know. I mean, to me, that is, yes, it may seem vaguely religious or vague in general, but it's also, I think that's actually the magic of it, that there are things that can't be put in a box and on a shelf and sold for, 19.99. There has to be, and that's what feels exciting to me. I sort of want to dig in here a little bit because as someone who, I think, there's an episode of your podcast that's going to come out where you and I are in conversation, and I think I was talking about my romantic relationship. I've been with my partner for 13 years. Yeah, 13, 14 years. And our relationship, we've had many relationships over that time, and our relationship right now is in a much more spacious place. We're changing. We're like, who are you? What do you really want to do with your life? How can you be like less contingent on me in a way? It's a really expansive place that we're in, and it's wonderful. And at the same time, we have a kid, and having a kid has obviously expanded who I see day to day, but it's also really been an isolating experience. Um, it's connective in some ways, like family wants to be there, family is more present, but friends are not as present. And I think part of it I see is like the ways we want to spend time. Like very few people are like, I want to spend time where there's a 3.5-year-old jumping off the couch and pretending to be Tom Petty. That's that's what my kid is pretending to be every day. And I can't explain how we got there. But not a lot of people are like, I'm dying for that interaction. Um, and so I'm just thinking about the kinds of interactions we want that feel good to us or stimulating or comfortable, and how do we keep expanding that, because there's so many people. I mean, children are one of those kind of groups of people, but there's so many groups of people that get kind of pushed to the margins, that we're like, yeah, I want to spend time with people but not those people. And I'm wondering like how this work of love and community, how it can start to change our practice around the kinds of relationships that we need and want.
Yeah, it's like capitalism created all these really intense, like siloed experiences. Like you should go to school and your friends should be all people just your age, and that's where you get your education. Whereas, of course, in like all of our traditional cultures, you got your education by being in the village with everybody and with the elders and with the babies, and with or you should have a fun experience of going to a party just with people your age and paying for this ticket to this concert. Like just there's like kind of like a lot of illusions about what constitutes like fun and a good time
Yeah,
and
yeah,
what's boring and dull, and a lot of that corresponds to like ageism and disability and racism
yeah,
and classism, like what's cool and glamorous and what's like dull and whatever. And part of that is just like the lack of integration. It's like we segregate death, we segregate childhood, we
exactly.
segregate old age, we segregate sickness. And so things like what it would be like if children were with us in all the contexts and their parents were with us or other caregivers in all the contexts and old people were around in all the contexts, and it wasn't like just like that. Even like, oh, I can't hang out with you with your kid because then we can't talk about anything serious. Like that's like, why is that true? There's a kind of like
Yeah,
just a set of boundaries that are kind of hard to imagine life without, since we're so immersed in them, but I think are
yeah,
really, they create like the idea that some labor is like not fun and is stigmatized and also usually the
yeah,
least paid, like childcare, cleaning, care of sick and elderly people, all this stuff. And so one thing I imagine is when you imagine a world not based in profit and coercion, then we would all be doing things because we want them done. And so
hmm,
like we might be, and everybody, in my mind, in this world, everything's free, right? So like you and I are working at this food collective, and where people can come by and get groceries, and these people are doing some childcare stuff, or these people are teaching reading over here at this place, and these people over here are working on, cleaning up this, area that needs cleaning, or fixing these buildings, or whatever it is. People are doing all these things, and they're doing them because they want to, and because they've developed those skills and talents, and they're teaching other people that. But our lives would probably be less specialized. We'd
uh-huh,
actually, like, I'm a baker. and I fix fences, and
Yeah.
you're a child care provider, and you do support for people who are having a certain kind of crisis, and also sometimes you
Yes.
do phlebotomy. It's just like there'd
Yes.
be like I think that when you hear stories of people who've like taken over their factories, people tend
Mhm.
to make the work less specialized, and they get rid of hierarchies of pay, and they find that, and they also produce somewhat less, so that everyone's
Yeah.
job is a little bit less straining, because the capitalist, of course, wants to produce maximum even if you hurt yourselves.
Yeah.
And they produce a lot more surplus that goes into the community. Like that's the story you get when like I'm thinking about Naomi Klein's movie from many years ago, The Take, that's about people
Mhm.
taking over
Mhm.
factories in Latin America. So it's like those, there's a lot of information there about like how people, because parenting is so isolating, as is caring for
Yeah.
elder people in
Yeah.
our society. There are a lot of people our age who are caring for elders, and I see this. It's
Yeah.
like, and and also, I mean, I just think so much about how many old people in our society are so isolated,
I
and
know.
that's why it's so difficult when they suddenly need care, and their children who may live anywhere suddenly have to, because those people don't have friends, often because they were in marriages that were completely isolating, and then their
Absolutely.
spouse died. I mean, the whole thing of isolation and how that relates to like the marital family form, and like, so I guess one of my questions always is, how do we collectivize more labor and despecialize it?
Mm.
And so that
Mm.
more people are like, I mean, I'm not amazing at playing with kids, but I can do it for a few hours. And I'm not
Exactly.
amazing. I'm like, I'm a little uncomfortable with some things, but I can do some of it. Or, just like,
Absolutely.
instead of like, I only want to do the thing that's the most fun that's as possible when I'm outside my paid work. And so I just want to like party or veg out, like just this kind of like, so I don't want to go hang out with Apprentice and 3-year-old because I want maximum party or veg out or whatever, like this
Yeah.
kind of, I just feel like there's not, no blame, but just like I feel like our desire is very shaped by these capitalist
Yeah.
forms.
Gosh, I really don't think we notice that, realize that, or it's like I find that too. The way that even I think about parenting sometimes, I'm like, okay, I'm parenting, and then you're like the other life I could have had that is somehow going on. I'm like, where's that life going? Um, but it's often so shaped. It's so shaped by ideas of achievement, or productivity, or whatever it might be. It so deeply shapes me. But a lot of things I like to do, I like to build things. I like to do things with my hands. I like to fix things for people. But those things that I, sort of do halfway, that I could help people out with, I don't actually have much time to do them or contribute them in the way that I would like to, because I'm on some other kind of hamster wheel a lot of the time. Um, I want to switch gears real fast, because I think there's something interesting that I see you and I both doing, which is, you kind of talk about this explicitly in your book, but I didn't talk about this explicitly, but felt in writing my book I wanted to infiltrate the self help genre. Um,
I think you did. I think you really did.
okay, great, thank you.
It's very
And
nice
thanks.
to see it.
That was my goal, and I was like, I'm not going to say this out loud, but I want to wedge in there. I see my book on the shelf sometimes. I'm like, it's kind of a wedge. Um,
Yes.
and
It's like a sabotage. It's like really good.
yeah, thanks.
It's like forcing a set of conversations into a space that is almost designed to exclude them.
Exactly, exactly. That was the goal. And also, even titling, I shouldn't say this, but even the title, I was like, just pick it up, and we'll see what
Mm-hmm.
happens. But um, I think there's something interesting about you, because you're infiltrating self help, I think, or whatever they call personal development. You are a lawyer, a law professor, an organizer. You are an author of books, and now a book on love. It's like, can you tell me a little bit more about Dean Spade's strategy of being Dean Spade and moving in the world? Like, yeah, what are you doing there? What are you up to?
I mean, I don't know about you, but I just like sometimes like I have to say things, and like
Mm,
sometimes people pick them up, sometimes they don't. There's like I've made a million tools and videos, and some things people get into and some don't, and it's just like I just have to say what I got to say, and you know what I mean. There's kind of like something else going on, and one of my experiences is that I've said a lot of very unpopular things over the years. Like I was like very critical of same-sex marriage advocacy when that was like all the rage, and I've been like part of the Palestine movement for like 20 years, and that's mostly been like
right.
not something especially Jewish people should be doing, and you know been very much prison and police abolitionist before that was mainstreamed, and like people just being like, you're ruining everything. Don't say that. And it's like not because I don't have shame and insecurity. It's just like I have to say it anyway or whatever, which is an interesting experience and has been very hard, especially when I was younger and had not built some kind of foundation for taking the hits and just being
Mm.
like, so it's interesting. It's really fun to do events for this book because people really seem to like to come to the events that come to in the book. And I'm like, this is so nice. Nobody's mad at me in the room compared to most of my
Yeah.
life sharing ideas, and having people be like not into it. So, I mean, but what am I doing? I think there's one question motivating all the work,
Okay.
which is like, how does change happen and what gets in the
Mhm.
way? So it's
Mhm.
like a lot of my work has been about like the ways that the lie of like liberal legal reform gets in the way of
Mhm.
change. People think this is going to change through a lawsuit, this is going to change through a statute, this is going to change through an elected official, and it discourages people from being involved in the day to day in their communities because you're supposed to like want it to happen through a nonprofit or an elite. So that was a lot of my first book was about that. A lot of mutual aid is like, okay, so then what is it I'm really saying we should all do? It's like actually change the material conditions in our communities, like actually fight in our communities, realize that we can do the thing we want now instead of waiting for someone else to do it through voting or sharing our opinions. This is how you do it. This is what's hard about it. A lot of mutual aid, the book is just like, this is what's hard. These are some of the tools that can help us get through it. And in all that time that I was doing those, 20, 25 years of doing that work that led to those two books, I'm also just like seeing how much of our movement obstacles is just conflicts in our
Yeah.
spaces.
Yeah.
And a lot of that conflict revolves around love, romance, sex, and friendship. So even if it's not like just a breakup, it's like things that happen attendant to that or disappointments around belonging. And so I also at the same time, all those years, I'm like doing my own work on myself. Like, how am I showing up?
Mhm.
What's in the way of the way I show up? What's gotten in the way of me acting out my values? So a lot of this new book is just about those common patterns that I've seen for myself and all the people I work with. What are they, and what would it look like to have some approaches to them that aren't blaming us for them, but that are just like, these are patterns. This stuff is not, you didn't invent this. This isn't you. This is like some stuff from our society that we can all work together to like identify and choose not to act out, even if it comes up and feels very personal. So that is, I think it's all the same approach to me about like what's getting in the way. Is there something I could offer that is helping me think it through that might help others?
Yeah, I really see that. I really see that, and it's sort of like uh, you've worked on the multiple levels, and you're saying like I'm seeing the things that actually bring us apart because it might seem. I mean, even to me, having heard of your work many years ago, 20. I don't know how old we are now at this point, Dean, but hearing about your work so long ago to the idea of you writing a book about love seems like a stretch. But when you talk about it that way, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, and it mirrors a lot of the journey that I've gone through too. Of like, oh, there's this stuff that we're not addressing amongst us, and I meant to. This is a note for Michael. I might want to take this question back earlier when we edit, because I want to talk to you about the romantic love piece, the kind of that thing that happens in movement spaces, activist spaces, organizing spaces where you're like, oh, finally, I'm with some people that I align with, that are talking about the things that I'm talking about, and all the desire, longing, projection that can come in. Um, I'm curious how you've seen that show up. I have to be honest, I have my orientation to a lot of that was to keep my romantic self out of those spaces because I was scared of what might happen. And it doesn't mean that that stuff still doesn't get in the mix somehow, or that the projections don't get in the mix. So I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about like what you've seen around how sex, attraction, romance shows up in those spaces, and then what are some of the things that we tend to get into when we bring that
Mm-hmm.
into our spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I want first and foremost, I think it's so useful to just be like, as queers, we are pro sex, pro erotic, pro desire, right? Like we know that that type of power inside us is meaningful. So that even if it's
Yeah.
just that I'm joining a group, there's an erotic, pleasurable
Yes.
charge. Even if I'm not like trying to specifically have sex with somebody in this group or date them, there's a charge to like, oh, is this going to be where I belong? And all the stuff is turned up in me that also gets turned up when I meet someone I might date. Like, am I going to belong? Is there going to be safety? Is there going to be emotional
Ah,
satisfaction I haven't had before? Am I going to be seen and understood? Am I going to be valued? Am I going to feel worthy? Am I going to get free in some area where I've been locked down, where I thought I couldn't want or couldn't be or couldn't act or couldn't move? I'm going to, we bring all of that kind of like hope and desire, and it's the other side of that coin, the fears. Am I going to be rejected again? Am I going to be excluded again? Am I going to be judged?
right.
We bring that when we enter any group or any new relationship, a friendship, whatever. And it's so helpful to be aware of it, because a lot of what I see
Mm.
happening in our groups is people come. This happens a lot with big conferences. People come and they're like,
Conferences are
I'm
hookup spaces.
yeah, I'm finally gonna be where I'm finally gonna get together with a lot of people like me, especially if I felt really marginalized in my community. There's not that many people who believe what I believe in or have been through what I've been through. And then people, it's
Right.
it's a setup for major disappointment, right? Because and a lot of us come kind of ready to find out unconsciously, I'm the only one like me. So you see a lot of people just charging this at each other in spaces where they want belonging. It's like you can get in your own pattern where you're like, I want belonging, and all I see is where I don't have it. That's just like a really
Mhm.
complicated thing. But so I think specifically with romance, it's like, of course it makes sense we get crushes on people who are saying ideas we've longed to hear, who are working on freedom practices we want. Like that is who we should have sex with and date and enjoy and be friends with, because, like everyone deserves more people who
Mhm.
inspire them and understand them. And what I see a lot in groups is like we're getting our social and emotional needs met through these groups. That's okay. But we're not really ready for all that that entails. And people
Mhm.
kind of pretend that organizing spaces and groups are like businesses and like that, like we should act
Mm.
professional and we should separate it all out. So
Yeah.
actually, if we were a little more honest that they're
Mm.
places where we get our social and emotional needs met, and we're also trying to get things done in our communities, and there's if this happened to me so many times, or I've seen this happen to people, you enter a space, it's so exciting, you're finally connected, and maybe there's someone you're really collaborating with a lot, and there's some kind of beautiful energy there. For one person, it may feel like I want to date, or the other person not, or both may feel that way for a
Sure.
while, or neither. But those energies can be connected to any kind of enthusiasm, right? So one for one person's mind, it
Yeah.
might become a romance, and the other, it's an amazing collaboration, but it's real, but then it can be what I see get in the way is, we meet in that way and we're having a wonderful collaboration. And I'm suddenly like, Prentice is my, future partner. And I'm like,
Right.
got a really big romantic story from our culture about what it is you need to be like and how this is the only thing that'll be okay. And then I might be really angry at you if you reject me, or if we do have some kind of romantic connection and you don't provide what I was dreaming of, I might be very angry at you, or I might want to tell everybody else that you're bad. Like I see a lot of blow ups around this, or I might have really bad boundaries because I really
Mhm.
want this from you. So I violate your privacy, or I mean, in worst case scenarios, like touch you in a way you didn't consent to. Like all of this happens
Mhm.
because we are all living in a society in which we've pretty much never learned how to practice consent, how to accept other people's no's, how to ask for what we want, how to, like tolerate the relating, especially when it comes to
Right.
sex and romance. It's just turned up. So there's so much conflict that happens in a which it can even just be you went out for drinks with other people from the group and I felt left out, and now I've got to
Oh
tell
yeah.
everyone how bad you guys are. I mean, I see it happen with any range of things, but when you add the sex or romance element, it definitely tends to get turned up for most people. And then I'm
Yeah.
no longer acting in my principles. Now I'm like, you know, acting like you're our political target, when actually we should be after the university president or the mayor or the weapons company. I'm like spending all my time trying to get people to dislike Prentice or the group. That is like a very common pattern that a lot of this book is. I mean, I see this book as an anti-violence tool and a tool that we're
Mhm.
trying to use against the disorganization of our communities from
Mhm.
us acting out these reactions that are really understandable, very normal, but like incredibly toxic.
Yeah, that feels so important. It's like you're creating distinctions that aren't necessarily like we may not have them. We're not operating as though we have them. Even the distinctions of like what kind of relationship is this? A lot of times we're like, this is either, maybe you're my friend or you're my lover, and I'm not actually familiar with all the different kinds of relationships we might have or embody with each other. So if I feel energy, I'm going to try to box it into one of these that I know. And, I think that gets encouraged by all the things we're talking about, all the systems. It's like you only have a couple options. But here, I think in the book, you're going, here are all these places to look. Here are some really meaningful distinctions that have us bring more awareness to how we relate to each other so that we don't get kind of caught in what's not fully conscious to us in a way that you're saying disorganizes us, in a way that kind of pulls us apart ultimately. And I just think that's it's so important to offer that, to help people see, help people discern, help people make those distinctions, and I really love the book because it's so workable. Like, you really, there's so many tools, there's so many questions, there's so many ways of really, like, it's not just it doesn't just get to float in the idea space, but you're like, actually work this through for yourself. What's happening in this relationship or in this organization? So I just think that's such a cool approach to being with people through this process.
I think there's something that I've really found that I think I learned in some ways through police and prison border abolition movement, but I feel it really intensely in the content of this kind of romance and friendship stuff. We are taught to get security by locking things down. And that's because that's what our society
Oh,
does, right? Borders,
Dean, that's a
And
word.
so I'm like, Prentice, I need you to be my best friend. And if you go on vacation with
Wow.
anyone else, then, or I need you to be my lover in this way, or like, so a lot of people at the beginning of an experience of desire with someone is like, what am I going to lock you into? And if I start to get a real fantasy about getting you to be that, whatever that thing is to me, and you don't do it, devastation, and I'm allowed to react however I want, and I'm the victim, that kind of vibe. Or also, it's just like not letting things change. Like the truth, it's like what you said earlier about you and your partner, like going through many different phases over these 15 years or whatever. It's just like,
Yeah.
you know, like, what if we meet and we're having a really good time connecting with organizing, and I want it to be romantic and you're not available for that right now. Can I roll with that and still really appreciate what is here? And then what if at another time you are available for that? Can you accept my yes or no? Or what if we are in a romantic relationship and then there's a reason for one of us to move somewhere, or another person we want to connect with? Like, I don't think everyone has to be polyamorous or whatever, but just the question about needing things to stay the same, or
Yes.
believing that anything could, or believing that that is a form of safety. Like, I think what
Yes.
happens is if I'm trying to make things stay the same in our friendship or in our love relationship or whatever, then I will try to punish you
Right.
or think that I'm bad or you're bad if they change. And if I do lock you down and get you to never change, that's not a win, because probably you're then not getting to express certain things. You might be resenting me. You might be smaller in your life than you wanted to be. I'm probably smaller. I hear from people a lot who are like, yeah, my date and I, we don't really have our own friends because we're threatened
Right.
by each other having our own friends, or we don't
Wow.
really consider if we'd want to like change our job or move or anything because it would threaten the stability. Like, there's a kind of like freeze frame. And those people usually aren't having a very like beautiful, erotic, desirous experience, because you can't
Yeah.
be like locking each other down. Like, the thing that's so fun at the beginning of any delightful connection is, oh wow, I actually feel like you're opening up a sense of desire or freedom or imagination for me. Like the way you talk or the way you move or the way you made me think about something, like that kind of expansiveness. And like a lot of times, as soon as I feel myself want that too much, I want to lock you down.
Yeah.
I don't, it's like, it's so common. It's like, to no judgment of any of us for having that. But could I know, oh, that's a societal pattern, and then have some tools for when it's coming up? Could we talk about it openly? Could we even get to a place where we could joke about it openly because it's just so normal?
That's
Morgan
right.
Bassix and I have a lot of jokes in our friendship about being possessive friends, or about,
Yeah.
that it's like, it's just so cute. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just knowing each other's like, uh, fallibilities and being
That's
really
right.
accepting of them. And it's hard, but it's like, that's what I want the book to support people to imagine, those kind of connections.
Right. Right. Creating an environment where real things can't be said, whether it's, I want to sleep with somebody else, I want to go explore something else, where it can't be said doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And I think, we confuse that all the time. Like, if I make it an environment where you can't say real things, then I somehow can pretend like those things aren't actually a factor in our relationship.
My longest relationship, when we were getting together, we agreed, like, if we decide to move in together, it doesn't mean we have to keep living together. If we decide, like, just
Exactly.
not doing a relationship escalator, but
Yep.
really being like,
Yep.
or if we decide to spend time being monogamous, it doesn't mean we always have to be, like, just like not seeing it as something that has to be locked down. And if you went in the other direction, it would be bad. So you could still talk about it if it was scary,
That's
but
right.
where it's an agreement to do what we really want to do now.
To me, that feels like the only way. It's the only way to keep it alive and to keep yourself alive. I mean, I want to be with someone who's growing. I want to be with people, friendships, family, whomever, that are still discovering themselves and still getting to know themselves. I don't want. I mean, this thing you're saying, I really want to just. You said it quickly, and I want to. I want to say it again so it gets heard. But that the tendency is to lock down. We get excited and we lock down. I just think that's such a helpful reveal of our societal patterns around any kind of feeling, any kind of excitement. It's like we lock it down.
And we're afraid of feelings. Like, I have to say that a lot of
Yeah.
people I talk to who are like, I would never have an open relationship because I don't want to feel jealousy. Jealousy feels bad. And I am a very jealous person. Jealousy feels very bad to me. But
Mm,
I'm like, I don't want to organize my life around trying not to feel something. I
exactly.
will feel jealousy even if I'm in a monogamous relationship. I'll feel jealousy, good. It's like, it's just in
Yeah.
my feeling palette. It's one of my life experiences. I cannot lock my life down in a way to avoid any given feeling. Instead, what
I
I
love
can
that.
do is care for myself and ask for care when I'm in a feeling and try
That's
to
right.
find out what's actually true here versus what is a scared part of me telling me. And like that, yeah, that desire to, like, it's the story of happily ever after. If I
Yeah.
just if I just find the right guy and lock him down to the right marriage, and we have the right jobs and the right house, we'll be happy. This is the big lie of capitalism, white supremacy, settler colonialism. Instead of like, wow, things are ever changing, especially now. Things are ever changing. There are no guarantees. What I want is authentic connections, and to try to feel what's real for me as much as possible and say yes and no when I need to, and be able to ask for what I want, and to be able to, like, be influenced by others, and to know that I will just feel comfortable and uncomfortable and the whole range for the rest of my life. That's just being alive. I cannot prevent that.
Right. Right. Dean, it is always it's really a joy to get to talk to you. Always. I feel um I don't know. I feel an excitement when I talk to you. I feel like new
Me too.
things open up. I remember I have a terrible memory, but I remember so many things that you have said in conversation to me because it felt like a little portal. So, um, thank you, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the friendship and comradeship over the years. I want to ask you before we go: is there anything that you just want to leave here that you want to make sure listeners know, a nugget, something you want them to take with them as we close?
I guess the thing I'm thinking about a lot. Well, first I just have to say, I love having this conversation with you, and I'm so grateful for all of the teaching, like especially your role as a somatics facilitator. Like, seeing facilitation done with that level of grace influences me every week in my own facilitation roles, and I'm so grateful
Thank you.
for it. And so grateful for your just, like, deep talent and rigor of making this book, making this podcast, like making all this stuff accessible to a much bigger group of people. It's so
Thank you.
needed. Right now, I'm thinking so much about how much crisis people are in. And I don't know about you, but a lot of people I know are having personal crises, and we're all taking care of a lot in terms of supporting people who are facing increased ICE and all the
Yep.
housing issues, and their families, and experiencing violence in Gaza, and just like so much. And a lot of people I know personally melting down in different ways, needing a lot of support. And so I'm just trying to think about, like, how can we all expect that anyone we're talking to might be going through a lot, or anyone who's not responding to us, or anyone who's said something weird, and just be like a little more generous to each other, like as if everyone we're encountering might be going through a really hard time. That's, I feel like, something to keep in our pockets right now, because it is, and it's just going to be getting more so. So, like,
Yeah.
how to try to not take things personally, and check things out with each other if we need to, and give people a little room, because it is just, really next level, and we're all unprepared. And I just think that's something that might ease our way a little bit.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks, Dean. There's
Yeah.
so much. I didn't even get to have so many things to ask you. I'll have to ask you back so I can ask you all these questions.
I love talking to you. I would talk to you in any context.
I love talking to you too. And you and Michael, you can come back. You and Michael are in Seattle
Oh,
most of
cute.
the time. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Your background is so good, Michael. I want to like live in that room.
Totally. Yeah, it's
Also,
not far from me.
your entry points, Michael, about like consent and care were, I'm like, could you write that speech down and could we all give each other that speech whenever we do anything? It was so much more meaningful and direct than most of the language people use to try to indicate that. It was like, it really like landed in me
Mm,
because it wasn't pro forma. It was like, I don't know. It was really cool. Thank you.
that's Michael.
Yeah.
That's Michael. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks. Cool. Oh, yes, you should go. The very best one is on Thomas and 11th. It's yellow and pink. And it's like, yeah, it's on the north side of
Mm,
the street at Thomas 11th. The road, the 11th kind of jags there. And it is the most fragrant rose in Seattle, in my opinion.
wow.
I'm gone from Seattle for a long time, but when I'll be
Ah.
back probably like in about a year. But when I come back, I hope I
Wait,
will get
what?
to
Are
find
you in
you.
Berlin for a year?
I'm just gonna like wander around Europe. I have sabbatical from my job, and I just wanted to. I like the movements here are so different. The
Uh-huh.
level of militancy and the histories of
Mm-hmm.
like squatting and fighting cops, like in
Yeah.
Athens. You know about this 40-year police-free neighborhood in Athens called Exarchia? 40 years they kept the
Wow.
cops out. It's
Wow.
like they're in. There's a bit. They're in a bit now, but I mean, like anyway, there's things here that I'm just like I have to immerse to understand. Things
Amazing.
in the U.S. feel so limited in certain ways that I
Yeah.
want to like so. And it seems like a
So you're
good
gonna
time to be
be in
gone.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna be in Germany for a good chunk of it, or are you going lots
I'm
of other
staying here
places?
till November. Then I'm going to go
Okay.
to Athens, and then I'm not quite sure. Like, there's also people I'm connected to who are doing really radical stuff in Italy and Portugal and
Mm-hmm.
Spain. So I'm just going to kind of like I want to learn about some of the radical land projects in the rural areas.
Okay.
There's like really big squatted areas, people like house refugees. There's like really like amazing different levels of scale of
That's awesome.
interventions that are like underground or like
That's
outside the law that are
awesome.
really cool.
That's awesome. I have some folks in the UK that are doing some cool stuff too. That around a good friend of mine's longtime organizer. I mean, she told me all the history of resistance against fascism in the UK, but is also working on um, the history of asylums and institutionalization and breaking out of that in the UK. So let me know if there's any
I'd
interest in
love to
that
meet. I want to
too.
go do a book tour in the UK in the fall. Maybe I could meet her.
Okay.
Maybe she'd be a good
Yeah.
person to talk to about the book in a bookstore or something.
Oh, absolutely.
Have
Absolutely.
you done
Yeah.
European book tour stuff?
I did one event. I did one event in London. I'm going to Oxford in a month, I
Cool.
think. Um, but that's for the trauma conference there. I haven't done a lot there, but
Hmm.
I have folks there. I was surprised, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to be doing that kind of touring, but I think the
Oh,
conversation about like self help in general is less developed in Europe,
yeah.
and but I do think there's a hunger for it amongst like the same set of people who like feminists and anti-racists and
Yeah.
stuff. Like if people see the need from organizing, but it's more stigmatized here, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. Well, safe travels. Be
So good to hang out with
well.
you both.
Good to hang out with you too. Thank you. Bye, Dean.
Bye, y'all.
Take care.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good to meet you.
See you later.